Welcome to the I Fired My Boss franchise podcast. My name's Dan Claps, founder and CEO of Franchise Playbook, a franchisor platform where we create, own, and operate dynamic franchise brands in the mobile services space. And my life's goal is to help people just like you fire their boss and become a business owner.
And I'm Christian Dadulak, top franchise consultant and co-founder of Real Franchising, a leading franchise consulting firm. And together, we're on a mission to help people fire their boss, hire themselves, and live the American dream through franchise ownership.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the I Fired My Boss podcast with your host, Dan Claps, and co-host Christian Dadulak. Hey, Christian, how you doing?
What's up, man? What's going on?
Living the dream. Back from training. I was away last week. Had some family in town this weekend, so I'm still a bit behind on my emails and stuff, but they'll get answered eventually.
Story of my life, dude. Story of my life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm actually reading a book called "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan Martell, and very good book. Highly recommend reading it. It's about getting out of email. So I'm actually in the process of delegating my inbox because it's very hard to respond to it these days.
No doubt, man. I totally understand that. And I don't know much about Dan Martell, but I see some of his stuff on social media. Seems to know what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm on a kick. So I met Tommy Mello. Tommy Mello is a big Dan Martell fan. He gave me all these books. One of them being Elevate, which is Tommy Mello's book, and then Buy Back Your Time. And now that I'm being cognizant of all the things I was doing that were like not time efficient, I'm on a kick to get that off my plate so we can do better support with franchise partners like Barrett Lafferty here. Hey Barrett, how you doing?
Hey, I was going to say living the dream, but you already used that line, so I'm doing great.
Awesome. Well, excited to have you on, man. You know, for our listeners, Barrett is a new franchise partner with Voda. We just finished up being together for a week out in Wisconsin for our training, and was excited to jump on. But you know, Barrett, if you've heard our show, we never give people their bio. We give them the chance to tell their bios. So, would you maybe want to just give our listeners a quick synopsis of your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it to the brief version. For the last 7 years, I've been with Amazon, kind of worked my way up through entry-level management in one of their giant fulfillment centers, up to senior management level. Used to run, the entire state of Oklahoma, the delivery station network out there, and then fell in love with Nashville, had to get out here. Took a corporate position in program management, and I currently lead the launch team, idle asset, and parking team for North America, so US and Canada. So did that. Prior to Amazon, I worked for Pepsi for a little over a year doing some freight brokerage sales work, cold calling, hitting the phones, trying to secure freight loads for Pepsi. Got my degree at University of North Texas prior to that. And then basically when I had fresh out of high school, I joined the U.S. Navy. So I spent 4 years overseas in Japan. Finished it out 4 more years reserve duty. But at that point, it was time to move on to greener pastures. Deployments were not my favorite thing to do, having kids. So married, I've got 3 kiddos. Oldest is 17. I've got a 11-year-old and then a 6-year-old. So they keep me busy. And then my most recent career development is, as you mentioned, being a owner of Voda of Nashville. So
Awesome. The highlight of your career.
Oh, absolutely.
That's crazy,
definitely.
man. A 17-year-old, you look so young.
Yeah, I got a baby face, so it looks even worse if I shave. So that's why it stays on.
I hear you. That used to be me, but not so much anymore.
I'm sure if you took it off, you'd have like
Yeah.
10 years gone.
Yeah, you take the beard off. It's a pretty big difference. You ever see those Instagrams where the guy has a beard and then he takes it off and he looks like completely different?
Yeah.
Yes.
Their daughters are like, put it back.
So
Yes.
my 11-year-old daughter, anytime I shave completely, she actually tears up. She cries because she's like, you're not my daddy. You don't look like my daddy. So I have to keep it on. She yells at me if I don't.
Well, it's a good look. It's a good look.
I appreciate it.
So, something I'm curious about, having just met you is, I mean, how did the franchise journey start for you? And did you immediately just go in thinking, yeah, I want to get into a business and I want to do a franchise, or did you kind of stumble into looking at franchise opportunities? How did it happen, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So, probably the story of a lot of entrepreneurs. Kind of started young. I used to hustle some, I guess, fake Ed Hardy sunglasses in high school that were all the rage. Used to, sell those for built out my profit margins and sold out and had to order more supply. And um, then I kind of went to the Navy, the corporate career life. And as I climbed the ranks of Amazon, I always had that entrepreneurial itch. But we were always moving. I mean, we moved 6 times in the last 7 years, so it was never the right time. Once we got to Nashville, we decided, hey, this is going to be home. We don't want to move again. And so I started that journey of looking, and I actually jumped on Biz Buy Sell and was looking at existing businesses for sale. Went and visited a few, talked to a few, um, almost put an offer for a dry cleaning business. Um, and then just didn't, I was afraid to pull the trigger, and that one got bought out from under me. Um, and to be honest, I had kind of shied away from franchising. I, had that mindset of, hey, why would I pay someone royalties and I could just open my own business? And that um, level of thought quickly changed as I started listening to podcasts. I started exploring the world, and something that really, really stuck with me was you get into franchising to be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And as a brand new business owner, that probably spoke out to me the most. So my franchise search was probably about a year and a half long. I just wasn't finding the right brand. I had found a previous brand that I was interested in. Then I had some personal things. My dad ended up having a heart attack. My sister got diagnosed with cancer, and I just had to put a stop to the search and focus on life for a few. And then when I jumped back in it, worked with Lance Growlich to help that franchise search. He's a franchise consultant, and he's who introduced me to Voda. And Voda was one out of, and I got to say, I looked at probably a dozen brands. Voda was one that instantly clicked for me. And funny enough, my wife had completely shut down all of the different franchises we were looking at, except for Voda. She was like, I don't know what it is, but I like this Voda one. It's the most interesting one to me. I could see myself in the business with you. And so for me, that was, that was a winner. That was the one that, hey, I got to jump on this before the territory gets sold because I got my wife on board. So
There you go. And sometimes that's the hardest part, right? I mean,
yeah.
just out of curiosity, you don't have to name any of the other franchises, but what other types of concepts were you looking at? Were they all home services, home improvement type brands? Were you looking at food or fitness or anything else? I mean, and ultimately, what was it that drew your wife to a home services concept like Voda?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, a year and a half ago, it was a wide spectrum. QSR, some, pet grooming franchises. And then again, I started listening to some franchise podcasts, and one that I really latched onto was the Beers with Brian, the Brian Beers podcast. And, he obviously has his automotive ones, but is branching off into the home services franchise. And that's when home services really started to click for me. And really centered my focus on that. And I had looked at everything from other restoration, roofing, painting, the gambit. But, what spoke out to my wife about Voda, I still don't know. Maybe it was just, um, the gut feeling, but it was one that she just saw, I guess, the potential just like I did. Where some of them, she was a little skeptical. She looked at Voda. We kind of went through the presentations together. Um, you know, uh, the carpet cleaning, it's something that she feels comfortable being able to go in and kind of work as that technician. Um, the career growth path that Voda offers, where you could bring someone in at, the entry level, teach them to clean carpets the Voda way, but then provide that career growth opportunity to learn restoration, start getting restoration certifications, and then expanding and growing in their career. Become a team supervisor, learn different trades, fire, trauma, etc. So I think that really spoke to the both of us in what Voda could provide.
It's interesting, Barrett. Like I was reading this book, actually the book I was talking about when we started this, and it all has to do with this guy Dan Martell, which I highly recommend listening to. And he was saying that he got a chance to spend a morning or a day with Richard Branson. People don't realize Richard Branson runs 400 companies, 400.
Whew.
Yet he can go skiing all day, and he's super smart. He works his butt off, but he can also be out of the day to day. And one of the things that he said, though, when asked what he would do if he were to go back in time and start all over again, is the first thing he would focus on would be the brand. And I think that so often I hear people say they love Voda, they don't know why. I think a lot of it's that intangibility of the brand being something that is cool and exciting. And we hire employees. I don't know, Voda just seemed like the place I wanted to work. And so much of that, I think it's that brand. And then I think secondarily, Christian, we look at Voda like a training center. I mean, we're training technicians. And what's cooler than talking to a technician? Like I had a chance to meet your GM, and I was asking him, where does he want to be? What are his financial goals? Um, and we're actually working on programs where we write that down and we put that into a dream manager's, type of solution. Like, hey, like here, you want to get to here. I not only does Barrett know that, but I know that as the CEO of Voda, down to the GM and technician level. It's like you want to buy a house, right? Well, how do we help you get there? Well, you got to learn sales, you got to learn this and that, and we work together. Um, with the technicians on that in that way.
Yeah, no, and I think that's awesome. And I think, well, I'll say that I'm going to have to read a lot of the books. You passed out a lot of good recommendations last week. You keep throwing them out. I'm a little bit behind. I'm currently reading Psychology of Money, so I got a lot of catching up to do. But no, I can't agree more. And I really think the brand it's spot on. It's something where, I'm wearing the shirt now. The hat is cool. I wear it to work almost every day, and it's just something that stands out. It's an eye-catching brand. You don't typically see that in restoration, cleaning or restoration, that very modern, eye-catching brand. And so I think that probably is one of those um, selling points, something that drew both of us in. So
100%. And for me, because I'm a franchise advisor myself, Barrett, and when I talk to clients, oftentimes maybe they come in interested in some kind of health and wellness brand, something that's a little bit more sexy and attractive, at least on the surface, before they really start to dig in and look under the hood and see what the opportunity really looks like. And initially, sometimes, you'll get pushback and from people that think, my gosh, I mean, restoration, there's so much competition, or it's just not a fun business. I can't imagine myself in this business. It's a boring business, or I never thought I would be in this space, or I don't want to do the work or whatever. So, I mean, how did you yourself get past? And I don't know if you experienced any of those questions or thoughts, but if you're like most people, I'm sure it's at least crossed your mind. So, I mean, how did you get past that? I mean, and what's your case for like the restoration industry, for, I guess, home services even more generally? Because I think a lot of people, once they do start to dig under the hood, they realize that home services can be a ticket to some serious wealth if you do it the right way, with the right company, with the right franchise.
yeah, so I'll I'll kind of start by saying that what initially got me interested in restoration was I experienced a flood event myself, probably about 6 years ago in my house, and I won't name the company, but I was less than impressed with the level of service, quality of work that went into that job. And while luckily I had great insurance and they foot the bill for that service, I still saw what that service cost, and my mind was blown. And so, I think at that point the gears had started turning of like, there's got to be a better way. Like, this cannot be what quality service looks like. And something, that I've carried with me through my career at Amazon is customer obsession. And so, um, not seeing that put into practice by some other companies, it was easy to get past, I think, the dirty job of restoration. But um, I honestly, I think, I attended my WRT and ASD course earlier this year, and maybe I'm the oddball or the weirdo, but I, it was extremely interesting, like the sciences that go into to drying, the the math. I'm a little bit weird, and I do enjoy math to an extent, and so like doing the calculations while they're basic, calculating how many air movers go into a space, and um, you know the time to extract the water, depending on how many cubic feet of water volume there is. Those were all very interesting and exciting to me. And you mentioned boring business. I think that's something that when I listen to various podcasts in franchising is um, oftentimes the money is in the boring businesses. They're fractured industries, lots of players, but not necessarily any dominant players. And so between the branding, between the leadership team, and that was really when I made my decision. I flew out to Discovery Day with Voda, and in my mind, I had it already determined. Hey, this can be the brand. This can be what we do. It's all going to hinge on my interactions with the leadership team when I get to Discovery Day. That was my sole. Hey, if it checks out, great, I'm going to sign. If it does, if they don't seem like who they were on these all the various calls and presentations leading up to that, then I'm out. And they were exactly who they uh, seemed to be on the previous calls. And in fact, Dan and I spoke immediately after Discovery Day. Sat in the bar and we were just chatting. And he was like, "How you feeling?" And I was like, "Look, man, if you broke out a pen right now, I'd be ready to sign." And I think by the end of that day, he had sent over the information, and it wasn't anything where a week later I was dwelling on my decision of and having buyer's remorse. I was excited that the journey had started. I felt comfortable with the leadership team in place, and can't say really the rest is history because it's still an ongoing journey. But I'm excited. So
It's great. Dan, if I could just real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you. I just had a quick question around one thing you said, Barrett, which I think was so interesting, which was around when you had that water damage event yourself. You said that the quality of the service was just not what you would have wanted it to be. And again, I will talk to a lot of people when I present restoration and Voda as a potential franchise concept for them if I think it's a good fit. And sometimes the initial pushback is, gosh, there's just so many companies out there that do this. There's the Serve Pros of the world, and there's other franchises as well, Paul Davis, and you name it. So, but I think they don't realize, A, how big the industry is, but also how poor most of the quality is out there as well. And that's not true of just restoration. That's true of a lot of home services businesses where, like you said, they're fragmented. There's a lot of mom and pops. They're unsophisticated. They don't have the systems and processes in place that would allow them to deliver a superior service and a superior customer experience. But I'm just curious, like from your standpoint, what was it that was lacking when you had your water damage event, and how do you think you could do it better at Voda? Or why do you think the Voda system would allow you to do it better?
yeah, so I think the gaps that I saw was the company that was servicing our home treated us like we didn't exist almost. They were there working for and with the insurance. So it was very hard to get updates. They were in and out of the house with, really no communication. I didn't know if they were going to come back, when they were going to come back. And that's really what I think really soured the relationship was lack of communication. Communication's everything, especially in that kind of event. That was mine and my wife's first, and I'll knock on some wood there. So far, only water damage event, but it's one that left a sour taste in our mouth because we just didn't have the communication. And yes, I'm glad they worked with our insurance to cover the financial pieces, but it was my house, my home. And I would have loved updates and understanding of what was happening, when it was going to be restored, why they were doing certain things, etc. Looking at Voda, especially going through training last week, Dragon, the founder, you can clearly, it's very evident that his heart is in this, and he has built out a operations manual that really does focus on that customer obsession. It focuses on the relationship. It's not all about communicating with insurance and leaving out the homeowner. It very much is, at every moment you're updating the customer, you're answering their questions, you're treating them like a person, and going above and beyond to really stop and understand, hey, this was a life impacting event. Maybe insurance covers it, maybe it doesn't, depending on what caused the flooding or the disaster. But you have to have that empathy. You have to help the customer through. And I feel that Voda, at least through the operations manual and then the leadership team, the support that is kind of provided in training, it's the same mission: customer first.
So now, totally agree. My favorite book is Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, which is all about that, similar to the Amazon culture, right? Amazon bought Zappos because of their obsession over the customer experience too. For me, our customer is the franchise owner. It's Christian. It's interesting. In reading Tommy Mello's books and becoming obsessed with Tommy Mello, which I often do, I get obsessed with one thing and I learn and then move on. Um, he was talking about how they built out a training center, a world class training center to train employees. And so we built out this phenomenal training center in Madison. And now it's funny, I'm looking at houses in Wisconsin, in Madison, and I want to find the Voda house. And I want to buy a house, and I want us to have a place where people can go and continue to train. And so I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how that's going to be, but like to me, we're a training business. Send your technicians back. Obviously, we have to be cautious with the whole joint employer, how all that works. But within the legal ways of doing so, like I just want to have a house where people go and they train and they keep going. And like it was so interesting, Barrett, in having an opportunity to sit down at dinner across from your GM. Which forgive me for getting his first name. What's his first name?
Brandon.
Brandon, sorry for not remembering that, but in talking with him and realizing how hungry he is to build a career and how much we know about sales that you think is like you may think is common knowledge, but it isn't. And then to see, like we're sitting there and we're talking about some of these sales tactics, and to see his eyes light up and to realize, wow, I could teach this guy just this little thing that could make such a difference. And how did you find him? Like, how did you guys get connected?
Yeah. So I actually direct reached out to Brandon on LinkedIn. I kind of had, did in-mail to a bunch of restoration folks in the Nashville area. And my plug to all of them was, hey, I'm the owner of Voda Cleaning and Restoration of Nashville. I have very ambitious goals to grow this market to be the number one restoration company. Do you want to grow alongside me? And a lot of them responded. Brandon was one of them. met the guy for coffee, just took him out for coffee and just had a chat. And, you know, Brandon doesn't have a ton of the sales experience, but he does have 7 years of restoration experience. He's one course away from one course each from being a master tech in fire and water. And that was something that I thought would be very inspiring for future techs, right? Like, hey, this is a guy who's mastered the field. Um, and I've always been the type of person where, um, I could hire on someone who is already a GM, pay them top dollar in the market, or I can bring someone who has all the potential to be that top dog and grow them. I can, nurture them and get them to where they need to be. And I feel like that creates something that you can't always find by just hiring that top dog, right? When you invest time and resources, training into an individual, um, you, as long as you treat them right at the same time, you're gonna have a lifelong employee. Versus someone who potentially you bring them in top dollar, there's not a lot of growth for them to go potentially, and then they go look for the highest bidder after that. So that was the why I kind of took it that approach.
Now you have him with all of the technical skill. Because remember, what's cool about restoration is you have these guys that just love restoration. That's what he's been doing. It's his career. It's interesting. I used to be involved with helping people buy a mental health franchise. And one of the things I loved about the mental health franchise was the people that work in the business, like they're licensed. Now I don't like licensed labor, but the thing about the license was that these are people that went to school for this job. It's a career to them. And to me, the closest thing to that, in my experience, is restoration because they may not have gone to college or college for restoration, but for whatever reason, when people get into this particular trade, it becomes their life. They love restoration. And so our business is able to grow a little bit faster than other franchises. For one of the reasons is that our success coaches also have GMs supporting like Barrett doesn't need to know everything possible about restoration. He doesn't need to know. He's got a GM that knows a ton. Um, so now just to talk through that, he's running the day to day. I know you're working a somewhat flexible job with Amazon. Um, what does the rest of the org chart look like?
Yeah. So, and I'll mention Nashville. They just opened it last year. They have the first and so far the only college degree in restoration. Middle Tennessee State University started up
Oh,
a water restoration 4-year bachelor's degree program. So, going to start recruiting from there when the first class graduates
heck yeah.
in a few years. But what the rest of the org chart looks like for us. So yeah, um, Brandon's going to be the GM. He's going to be running the day to day. And one of the things I was very clear about in the beginning is, hey, as we're growing, as we're scaling, that is a very hands-on role. You're basically a technician, a sales guy, and the GM in one package. But like I said, my wife was extremely interested in Voda from the get go. She wanted to be a part of it. She actually came out last week and attended training with me and Brandon. And to be honest, she got more hands on in the training than I did. Even every time Dragon asked for someone to carry the hose, she raised her hand, went over there, and and uh, put the learning into practice. So she's going to be our, quote unquote, first restaurate or carpet cleaning technician. So she'll be, scheduled on the jobs. She'll be doing ride-alongs with Brandon, and then eventually learning that restoration craft. At the same time, currently got a open rec for a business development manager. Again, I'm working a full-time job, and while I'm going to be attending BNI meetings and getting involved with my local chamber of commerce and various networking events there, I want someone to be able to dedicate kind of that full-time sales and business development, landing those corporate um, restoration contracts, and um, if needed, going door knocking and hanging our door hangers up and trying to secure additional business. Um,
So just for our listeners, just for anyone listening to
Yeah.
this, so we're talking about, and this is so important. If you want to run any home service business, really any business in general, but I'm going to use home services as an example. Every business, as I've said on other podcasts, they need marketing, sales, operations, finance, and legal. Now, in the franchise component, legal's outsourced. We got all that handled with contracts and everything else. Then you got the finance, which we do the bookkeeping. And really outside that, you need an accountant in this type of business because we have so many systems to help you with the revenue. You got operations, which is in this case, Brandon, the GM. Marketing, which our department handles, which I think you had a lead come in today, which we could talk about. But marketing, no matter how much though we do around marketing, no matter how much that Barrett is good at networking, going and being a BNI, if he's going to not be a full-time salesperson, which by the way, being an owner is a job in itself, he needs a salesperson. So in my opinion, if you're going to own any, and people say, well, this business is more semi-absentee than the other. No, it's not. Every home service business is the same. Painting and roofing and plumbing and window, I don't care what it is. Those are all widgets. Every business needs marketing, sales, ops, finance, and legal. So in your case, and then you got a business owner. So you're being the business owner who's out there networking, you're out there building some business. You understand that marketing isn't everything. You got to market and you got to sell, and you understand that you can't do sales on your own. So you're hiring a salesperson, which is the right way. Um, you're still selling, but you have someone full time selling, or you're going to be having someone. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I could potentially hold off on that salesperson, but I'm not going to grow to my revenue targets for year one if I do that. And so I really think, to your point, you've got to have all the pieces in place, and you got to know what you can handle and what you can do. I know I can sit, with my full-time job, I can also put in the extra hours to go to the BNI, to do the Chamber of Commerce events, and respond to um, um, reviews and do some of the social media outreach. I have plenty of time to do that. Where I don't have the time and is in the sales front, and so that's where I need to hire to fill that gap. So
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap that up, it's so interesting because I have this conversation all the time. People will buy multiple territories, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great, but they'll so easily write a check for more territory, but they won't write a check for a salesperson. And I always think it's the most like ridiculous way of thinking that I've come to realize now that it's the tangibility. Most people, it's their first time owning a business. Um, Buying more territory, and I know you're about to buy some more territory, or maybe that's confidential, but I'm not talking you out of it because you have the mindset around growing. But like people, they can understand buying territory because it's like buying real estate. But I always say to someone, like, listen, buy more employees. That's going to pay you an immediate, return. And so like, but I think it's just a mindset. So I'll give you one more example. We just implemented some software to help us oversee sales efforts much better. It's a sales enablement tool that uses AI. It costs 12 grand for the year. Sounds like a lot of money. Yet we'll hire an employee for 12 grand a month and not think twice about it because we're so employee centric. But $12,000 one time for technology is so crazy because it's our mindset that tells us we're not supposed to do that. Um, and I just think it's so interesting. You're talking about the person that's going to generate revenue. If there's anything that makes sense to hire, it's the salesperson. Like it's the most, because like sales cures all. You could get sales and like I've never heard somebody complain about I'm working really hard and a lot of time, but I'm making a lot of money. Like, yeah, eventually you're going to want to delegate and buy back your time. But when you first launch a business, who cares if you got to work a lot? If you're making money in the beginning, sales cures all. Then you could start to delegate because the money's coming in. I would focus on revenue right away.
yeah, no, I can't agree more. I think, and I'm one of the most frugal individuals out there. I love watching my brokerage account grow, hate watching it shrink. And so this was a very big mindset shift for me because I'm self-funding a lot of this and, pulling money out of that account, putting it into the business. It's one of those things that it hurts a little bit to watch, but at the same time, when you take it from the mindset of this is an investment, just like the stocks and whatnot I'm holding in my brokerage is an investment. This is an investment. And, you know, sometimes you've got to invest a little bit more. And that's one that, I kind of took from you and Zach, the franchise playbook y'all have of, you know, hire and put into place not where you are now, but where you want to be, right? I know the revenue I want to be, and I know what it's going to take to get there, and it's not just having Brandon go out and door knock. It's literally a full-time salesperson going out and helping grow that business. So
I call that, yeah, and I call that the eat the frog moment. So you got to eat the frog. Think about it like a snake. If it eats a frog, it's big and then it digests it, right? So like for me, like I'm going through the same, and we all go. It's all the same. Businesses have the same problems, just at different scales. So for me, I'm still talking to prospective franchise owners. I can't do it anymore. I have too much to do as running Voda, and so I have to buck up, and I got to pay a certain salary, and I got to pay a recruiter, and I got to do all these things, and I got to maybe eat the frog, and leap into the scariness of no longer doing that to get to that next level. So we just always have to do that, just at different levels and different stakes on the table. But I think you got the right mindset, and I think you said something really great. Like, as they say, whether you can or can't do something, you're right. Whatever you tell yourself, like, you got to elevate your vision, because if you want to have a vision where a salesperson, how much do you think they want to make, that sales guy?
uh, they want to make as much as they can make. Most good salespeople, they want to, and that's how I'm advertising the roles, uncapped commissions. They want to know that, hey,
Yeah.
if I put in the most effort that I can, I'm gonna get a piece of the pie. And yeah, so I'm
So
hoping,
you have to have a vision. Sorry, you
yeah,
have to have a vision big enough, right? That their vision can fit within there. What do they want to do? I want to buy a house. I want to get married. I want to buy a boat. I don't know. I want to buy a second house. Like,
yeah,
you have to have a big enough vision that your team can fit within there, and their vision fits. And then the bigger you grow, you just have to make a bigger vision. It's the only way you can hire great people, is if your vision is big enough, and that starts with the confidence and the mindset.
yeah, absolutely.
So one question before we wrap up here was around customer acquisition, sales and marketing. Because I think a lot of people, again, especially for people that maybe they're looking at an existing business because they like the idea of buying something that's already established. And there's pros and cons to that, like there's pros and cons to franchising as well. But I think one of the key things that drives people to franchising is this thought process that I'm going to get some kind of help with customer acquisition. And a lot of franchises out there will claim that they're going to help with that stuff to varying degrees. Some really hit it out of the park and do an insanely great job with sales and marketing. And then others don't have they make claims that they really can't back up when it comes to helping their franchisees generate leads. So I know that you have a couple of very interesting stories just already with Voda. I know you're just not even really up and running yet, but just about to be. But I'm curious, what did you hear throughout the discovery process with Voda that made you so confident in their ability to help you with lead generation? And then what has that been like so far now that you haven't even technically launched yet?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, when I started going through Discovery Day, or sorry, the sales process, it was very much a leap of faith, because I think there was only one or two folks open at the time, and they were getting leads, but it was all brand new. But after I signed on and I stayed in contact with folks, you can clearly see the marketing's working. And Christian and Lexi, who are on the marketing team for Voda, they're very dedicated. They're very knowledgeable. Any question I have regarding, lead sources, what I should spend to generate the most leads, they're always quick to answer. I think, in the lead up to, I just turned the leads active today. And within the, I guess, first hour of them being active, a water restoration lead came through. And, I don't have my van yet. It's expected on Wednesday, so I can't actually go and service that job. But I was tempted to, get a portable extractor, throw it in the back of my truck and drive out there. But, it's better that I don't have a Voda wrap yet on my truck. So, but no, I think the marketing efforts work. Obviously
That's
the
killing me, man.
I know me too. I'm
Come on, I'll fly down there. Let's get the portable extractor.
yeah.
And is it a decent sized job?
Well, I didn't even call the customer because I didn't want to potentially take away from another business that would be able to serve.
Is it off Google though?
No, that was off of Angie's List.
Off of Angie's List.
Yeah.
Okay. Just make sure you let marketing know because okay.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, with Angie's they track like contact rate.
Oh yeah.
Just let marketing know because if look at this real time success coaching here on the
Yeah.
podcast.
There you
But no, if
go.
you let them know because Angie's tracking how fast you call and everything else, and that can
Gotcha.
lower your rating.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, I'll let them know then. That's a good tip.
yeah, that's huge. Like with the well, yeah, we'll talk about it later. But it's very important to call leads. And that's why we have the call center calling right away because it's so important. Even if even if you don't close the job, like that they see that we reached out because a lot of companies never do reach out, and then that's it. Basically, what people don't realize is like Thumbtack, Angie's, Google Service, local service ads. All they are is aggregators of home service providers, and what they're doing is they're saying, hey, we're over here vetting these home service providers so you, the customer, can feel confident in Angie's or Thumbtack or Home Advisor or Google. And so that's why like we call them right away and all those things, which is just so cool, right? Like it's like these things weren't available only a few years ago. And so like it's like I like them because they level the playing field. A lot of times people would say to me like, "Oh, Home Advisor, it doesn't work." Blah. No, you're not doing it to the level. Like it's as business owners, like and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ramble because I know we're wrapping up on time, but like one of the core tenets we believe in at Voda, and Dragon says this all the time, and I coin it off of what he says. Don't blame them, train them. Almost every time something is going wrong with your people, it's because the training is wrong. There's something wrong in you as the leader. No offense, it's true, right? Like for me, oh, why does everybody not know what they're doing? Because you're not giving them enough direction. Because you didn't give them scorecards, you didn't give them accountability, you didn't give them the standard operating procedures, you didn't give them. I mean, I can go on and on, right? And so until you've done all of that, chances are, as a leader, we have to improve as a leader, then as an employee, right? And so it's just so interesting because people say Angie's and Thumbtack and Home Advisor don't work, but I always think like if they looked in the mirror, what are they not doing? That you know what I mean? That could be going well. But anyway, yeah, let's get that extractor going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, and it's obviously working, and it's not lost to me. I know I'm not gonna run a multi-million-dollar business just off of Angie leads, Thumbtack leads, et cetera, right? There is that sales and marketing effort, and there's that organic outreach as well. And in fact, so far I've got again, haven't launched. Van is supposed to be here Wednesday. Already let our call center know, hey, start booking jobs Friday and onward, just to play it safe. Make sure maybe the van takes an extra day or so. But I've already got 3 appointments on the book for next week. Now, they're not going to be paid per se. I offered my neighbors three households in the neighborhood, 1 free room carpet cleaning with the ability to add on additional rooms for 40% off. And I was willing to do that because, hey, if I do a great job and these folks leave a review, that's going to help me grow organically. And in fact, one of them is a she owns multiple rental properties, and so she wants to have her whole house done. She actually was the 4th person, and was like, hey, I know I'm not one of the free room folks, but would love to still have you come out and do my carpets. And I said, you know what, I'm going to give you the free room. I'm willing to do that. To you were 4th, you were like a half second off, so I offered her the free room, and then that's when she opened up about all of her other rental properties. So I think that's the right way to do it. There's that organic networking and marketing, but then yeah, it definitely helps to have the Angie's, the Thumbtack, Google, and I think all of that is things that Voda and Christian, Lexi, they're super supportive and helpful in providing that information. And I can easily bounce ideas. I think I've you know, marketing at myvoda.com, you know, that email address. I think I've emailed it a dozen times, just saying, hey, Christian, what do you think about this? I got this random email about sponsoring a magazine publication, you know, good spend or not. And he'll quickly respond back with some questions I should ask him, et cetera. So can't say enough positive things about the marketing support at Voda.
That's huge, man. That's huge. Look, if you're going to pay a royalty, you got to make sure that you're getting something in exchange for. And I think Dan, obviously, and your team over there at Voda and Franchise Playbook, you guys have put together something awesome. So really awesome to meet you, Barrett. One last thing I'll ask you before we wrap up. I mean, do you have like a 30-second to a minute piece of advice that you would give someone that's exploring franchise ownership generally, or someone that's looking at a home services or restoration business more specifically?
Yeah, I would say one, do it. Just definitely go in and do it. Make sure though that it, you know, we all have different personality types. We have folks that we, you know, work well with. I think for me, Zach, Dan, Christian, all very like-minded individuals. You know, Dan's mentioned, I think 16 or so times just in this session about the various books he's reading. And, you know, that shows he's got a growth mindset. He's always trying to improve. And that's a quality I carry in myself as well. And so my advice is find the right concept. Don't focus too much on the industry per se. I think home services are great. And I think if the brand is right, the leadership team is right, then it's worth it. Jump in, you know, don't look back.
Boom, mic drop. Well, I think that's an awesome place to leave it, guys. Barrett, thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been a tremendous amount of information here. Super valuable for the audience, I'm sure. And so everyone that's listening, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the I Fired My Boss Franchise podcast. Super excited to have you. And as always, if you like what you heard today, make sure to share it with friends, family, whoever you think might get some value from this. And leave us a review, all that good stuff. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
You're f***ing fired.
If you want to say those words to your boss, make sure you head on over to ifiredmybosspodcast.com and fill out the form to schedule a no-cost consultation. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend who might also want to fire their boss.